done victim advocacy work since the 1960s. I've been working with trauma survivors since the 1960s. I've learned in that time that there are ways that you approach someone who's a trauma survivor, and there are ways that you don't do that. Now, many of us who have done this work directly have sort of figured that out over time, but we never wrote it down, we never called it anything, except common sense. Okay? But one of my instructors a long time ago told me something. He said, Linda, the thing about common sense is it's neither common nor sensible. So you never want to assume that what's common sense to you is to somebody else. So when we talk about this trauma-informed thing, what is it we want to do and why we want to do it? Okay, I think as an example, and this is in the headlines right now, so I sort of apologize for using it again, is the Ray Rice and Janae Rice case. All of us have seen that video multiple times. I tend to watch ESPN because I'm a sports nut, and I tend to watch CNN because I'm a news junkie. So between those two, I have probably seen that clip of the elevator beating and the dragging of the body into the hallway. I have probably seen that clip 100 times. Okay, now the truth is, I can watch that and it probably doesn't cause me trauma because I'm so used to hearing about and seeing those kinds of things, which is both good and bad. But people who aren't used to it see that and they're very shocked. Now the thing about trauma-informed, and the reason why I bring this up, is think about everybody that you've talked to who has an opinion about Janae Rice. Everybody's got an opinion about her. Okay? How many people in this room know her? I see a show of hands. Okay. I'd also like to ask all the news people, all the talking heads on the news, how many of them know her and have ever spoken to her? And I'd probably get the same show of hands that we got here. I don't know her. I don't know her story. I don't know her background. I don't know all the things that the talking heads do with those why questions that Sarah just mentioned that we don't want to do. Because we've got everybody in the news deciding for her why she's still with him. Why did she still marry him after that beating? You know, why does she minimize it? Why did she blame herself? Why did she say, it's my fault too, it's my responsibility? Okay, those are all the why questions, or the opposite of trauma-informed. But that's all you're hearing about that case. So everybody out there in the world thinks they know everything they could know about Janae Rice, and the fact is, none of us know anything about Janae Rice. The only thing I know about her is that she was in an elevator with the man she was engaged to, who hit her and knocked her out, and dragged her out of the elevator and into the hallway to their room. That's all I know about her. And I know I saw her in a news conference, and I saw the look on her face, but I don't know what that means because I don't know her. I could judge that. I work with trauma survivors every day. I have some clues. But until I talk to Janae and I get her story, I don't know anything. Okay, so the thing from a trauma-informed sense is that everything that you've heard everyone say about Janae Rice up to this point is the opposite of trauma-informed behavior. Okay, so if we look at trauma-informed behavior, I think you've got a slide. Do you have a slide up there? Hey, there it is. I had told her not to give me the clicker because I fling my hands around all over the place. This microphone's liable to go flying, but I knew if I had that clicker in my hand, it would work. So I'm a Heinz 57, but I'm part Italian, and that is the part. I testify in court all the time, and there's probably not a time I've testified in court where I would hit the microphone with my hand when I'm moving around. Okay? Back in the days when I was trained about how to do domestic violence, how to do expert witness testimony, they said, kind of sit very nicely and with good posture, which I never do anyway, and keep your hands still. It is impossible for me to talk that way. Okay? They also said, kind of don't get excited about your topic. Well, I've done expert testimony almost 400 times, and I've somehow survived it all, moving my hands, not sitting up straight necessarily, and getting a little excited once in a while. Okay, so let's think about this trauma-informed thing. Okay, if you look at this slide that you have up there, the things that you do is you stop asking what's wrong with this person. Don't look at the person as their disability. Don't look at the person as defined by the worst thing that's ever happened in their life. Don't look at the person as their symptom. Okay, now you're trying to make a decision about whether somebody gets benefits or whether they have the paperwork in there to get their benefits. I've been working with victim witness since I started in practice in 1981, so I have a lot of respect for the work that you folks do and the paperwork that we all do, and try to streamline that paperwork to make it all work more effectively. So I've been working with, I may not have worked with any of you personally, but I've been working with your program for a very long time, and I'm very appreciative that it's there. So we don't ask about what's wrong with the person. We ask about what happened to the person. What happened to you? We want their story. See, you see me here and you saw me roll around in this scooter, which I need to turn off. You see me rolling around here in this scooter. And some of you may have wondered, or not, why is Linda in that scooter? Okay? Now, you could ask what's wrong with me, and that would kind of be okay because, you know, there might be something wrong with me. Okay? Or you could think, like sometimes people do when you see them rolling around this grocery store in scooters. Linda's in that scooter because she just got too fat to walk around. Right? Some friends of mine several years ago, because I had so much trouble walking, I have MS by the way, which is why I have the scooter. But several years ago when I had MS, but I could still walk okay. I'd go places with my friends and they'd say, Linda, why don't you get one of those scooters? Because it's so easier for you to do this. And one of the things I said is, I'm not getting on one of those scooters till I lose 50 pounds because I know what to do. Right? So, I'm in this scooter and you could look at me and wonder why. I've told you why I have MS and I can't walk very well. So that's why I have this scooter. Okay, now, do you want to define me by being in a scooter and having MS? Am I defined by MS? Okay, MS is limiting. For me it is. Okay, I used to be an athlete. I used to play golf twice a week. Okay, I used to do a lot of things. I used to walk my dog. I used to walk. So am I defined though by MS? I could be if I wanted to be, I suppose. But I'm not defined by that. So instead, I'm a perfect example of that. If you wanted to, you know, if someone came up to me, kids come up and go, what's wrong with you? Because that's what kids do. Okay. Adults want to know, want to do that, but they'd rather send their kid. Right? So if I see a group of adults kind of looking at me and wonder what's going on, they say, kid, I know what we're doing. I know what we're doing. Is she just too fat to walk, or is there something really wrong with her? All right. So what you want to do, though, is what happened to the person. They have a story. Okay, people who have been victimized, and we always use the word survivor, but because you talk to people about being victims of a crime, that's what you work with. Okay, when someone has been victimized, something happened to them. There's a story about what happened to that person. And it doesn't matter if you have processed 300 rape cases. Every story is different. Every impact on the person is different. Every situation is different. So instead of just keeping in your head, okay, oh, it's another one of those rape survivors. They're hard to deal with on the phone. Okay? It's not a rape survivor. It's a person that's happened to, something happened to them. Don't define the person by their victimization. Define them as a person who happened to be victimized. Okay? So think about what happened to this person and their story instead of looking at what's wrong with the person. You can move to the next slide. I have a paper here with some of it on here. There we go. So what does all this stuff mean about being trauma informed? Okay? And I'm not going to read a PowerPoint to you. I hate it when people do that to me. I go to a conference and somebody stands there and looks at their PowerPoint and reads it to me. Just give me the damn PowerPoint. I don't know. I could have stayed home and read the PowerPoint. Thank you. There it is. Okay? I could have been in my comfortable recliner with my feet up with my Diet Coke and done all that and read the darn PowerPoint. Okay? So I'm not going to be reading you any PowerPoints. Okay? I'm just going to talk to you. Okay? So all this trauma-informed stuff means that we want to approach things differently than the way the entire media thing has approached Janae Rice. Okay? One of the things about what's happened to her is, how does she ever get normal from what we've done to her? We have secondary wounded her by the way we've treated her. So how does she ever get okay with ever telling her story because everybody's telling it for her? How does she ever get okay with any decision she ever makes about Ray Rice from this point forward? See, most victims of domestic violence don't have a camera on them. They may have been beaten up and knocked out and dragged around. But it's going to be a whole lot easier for me to find their story and to talk to them and to understand their story than it's ever going to be for Janae Rice, because she can never tell her story now. We've taken that away from her, which I feel horrible about. Because every time I see that, what I think about is the impact on her. How does she feel knowing that all of us have experienced and made judgments about the worst 5 minutes of her life? So what we've done is we've secondary wounded her. And what we want to be careful about as people who work with trauma survivors is to not be one of those people that does secondary wounding. And that's probably what we really are talking about when we talk about trauma-informed services, is to approach the person in ways where we don't do secondary wounding. The person's already had something horrible happen to them, and they've reported it to the police, or you wouldn't be involved. Most of the people I work with don't report to the police because most trauma survivors don't. Most domestic violence and sexual assault survivors do not report to the police. You never see them. Okay, you see them after they've talked to the police, because that's one of the criteria to get your services. So they've been already to the police. And even though I know Elaine is doing a lot of work with training law enforcement, and a lot of us are doing work with training law enforcement, and I think Sid, you're working with the POST program to help them there. What we know is that the most law enforcement people are still about, let's get the details, let's find out what happened, let's find out the who, what, where, when, and how, and let's wrap this thing up so we can all go home. Okay? No matter how much we train them, and I've done a lot of training with law enforcement, no matter how much we train them to try to get to do otherwise, it takes a lot of time to do a good trauma-informed interview. They want to get it done. They want to get what's going on. They want to get it all written down, get it all tape recorded, do all the stuff that they do, get it in a police report, so they can work on finding the perpetrator or get a case put together so the DA can prosecute it. That's what they're trying to do. But everything about what they try to do is the opposite of trauma-informed. Because unlike most memory, because most times memory is the best closest to the event, but it's the opposite of that with traumatic memory. Okay, I get asked this on the witness stand all the time. It's like they haven't gotten it yet. They should, because they get the same answer all the time. Well, isn't memory better closer to the time of the event? Because I interviewed the person usually several months later. And I said, well, that's true for most things, but actually the opposite is true for traumatic memory. It tends to get better over time. So when a cop is out there, it's a fresh scene. That's what they do. And they want to try to process that scene, figure out who's the perpetrator, get that person arrested, take care of the victim if they need to be sent to the hospital and do whatever, but they want to get the story right now. And for most trauma survivors, that is not possible. So when they're busy asking who, what, when, where, how, that's not what happens in the brain of a trauma survivor. Because traumatic memories basically go in there and get shattered and go in every which direction, Okay, the person doesn't have the access to those. My mom worked in a bank all of her life. And for some reason or other, it was considered a bank that was a high risk for robbery in this little town of 3,000 people in Indiana. But because there were lots of ways to get away from it, they figured it was a high risk to be robbed. And so they trained all the staff because somebody knew a little bit about traumatic memory. Each person was tasked to notice and remember one thing. One person was tasked to remember the hair color or whether they had a hat on. Another person was tasked with something about their face. And what my mother said was, give me their shoes because I'll be passed out on the floor. And lo and behold, one day their bank actually was robbed. And if any of you are old enough to remember Mayberry, you may not remember Barney Fife carried that bullet in his pocket. Okay, that's the kind of town I grew up in. It was like Mayberry. And we had a little town cop, and I swear he must have carried a bullet in his pocket the same way. Okay, so I digress here a little bit. But my mom works in this bank that has all glass windows in the front. And across the street is the one and only filling station in this little town when I was growing up. And our little Barney Fife is over there getting gas while the bank's being robbed. Okay? So he's over there filling up his car with gas, and somebody hits the buzzer for the alarm. Well, everybody hits those. I used to do cleaning at that bank. I hit that alarm, I can't tell you how many times. So all kinds of false alarms went on at that bank. So Barney's across the street, gets the alarm, and saunters across the street, thinking it's probably a false alarm. Saunters in the front door, does not have weapon drawn, didn't look to see if who was in there. And he got shot in the leg, and he's okay, but they really did rob the place. There really were robbers, and they got away, and they've never been caught. And my mom did remember their shoes. Okay, so trauma survivors remember strange things, but it's almost always sensory related. Okay? If someone is coming at you with a gun in your face, the thing you probably can describe the most is the gun. But you can't tell them how tall the person was, how much they weighed, what they had on, what kind of accent they had on. Did they have any distinguishing characteristics like a tattoo? Okay? And that stuff, you don't remember that, but boy, you can describe that gun. Or you can describe something that you heard or that you smelled. I do a lot of work with people who are victimized as children, and especially sexually abused as children. And oftentimes what they remember most are sounds or smells that were associated with being molested, like dad's whiskey on his breath. And if they ever encounter somebody with that whiskey on their breath, that triggers them back into trauma. Okay? So those are the kind of things that people remember, especially in the beginning right after trauma. Okay, now in those other few days they sort through those Post-it notes. They find some of them. They don't find them all in the beginning. You know, they might find some now, and then the next time somebody talks to them about it, a few others appear. Okay, and then someday down the road, suddenly they stumble across one of those Post-it notes that's stuck to the bottom of the desk. Okay, so that information will come later. But as you talk to people, what you want to remember is that you're dealing with trauma survivors. And as soon as you talk to them about the crime, which is what you're calling to get information, usually, about the crime, and I think most of the time what you do is about the forms where you're trying to get the information so you can process the claim. Okay, so you may be asking for that receipt, you may be asking for this piece of information that's incomplete, but know that when you bring it up, you may be just the very fact that you're on the phone with the person may have flipped them right back into trauma. Because what a lot of people do is dissociate from that trauma in order to survive it. And me calling them up and going, "Hi, I'm Linda Bernard, I'm from the Victim Compensation Board." They're gone. I told you this microphone could go. We gotta be careful. Okay? So the minute you even say where you work, that could trigger some sort of response in them that flips them right back to, "Oh my God, I'm back in the trauma." But they don't know it, and they can't necessarily say that to you. They're just feeling it all. So suddenly they're on the other end of the telephone. You don't usually see them in person, They're on the other end of the telephone, and they're back at the scene of the incident, and you don't have a clue they left. So you're asking your questions, and you're probably being very nice and very, very kind and supportive. But they're no longer there with you. They're back at the crime. Or if they have a prior traumatic event, they may even be back at that one. So when you talk to people, if it sounds like, wait a minute, they're not with me anymore, it's probably because they're not. And so that's when you want to use some of the skills about the trauma-informed interview that you do. Okay? Is you do want to look at them and you do want to hear them. And it may take more time with them than you wanted to give. You're overworked. You have more doggone cases to process than you have time for. And you're on the phone with what could have been a 5-minute question. But you may end up being on the phone for a half an hour. And if you try to push that river, you're not going to get what you want, and you're going to harm the survivor. So what I would say to you is when you make a call to somebody who's a survivor, whatever amount of time you thought it was going to take, triple it. And that's probably generous. So if you forgot to go to the bathroom before you made that call, it happens to me all the time. An attorney will return a call to me right when my bladder is full. And this is going to be, a long conversation. Now, if I've got a telephone there, I can choose not to answer it right now and go to the bathroom and call them back. But if you were thinking, all right, I just had a cup of coffee, I got 5 minutes to get this question answered, then I'm going to go to the bathroom. Go to the bathroom first. Triple your time expectation that you thought you were going to be with that person on the phone. Okay? Because you have to be able to let people unfold. You have to allow people to tell their story, whether you really need to hear the whole story or not. You have to allow them to tell their story. I have a client who was a victim of domestic violence. She's left her abuser. She's trying to get her life in order. But she was very isolated in her family. And they also had a lot of money. They're very high-end, made lots of money, owned their own business. So she had this fancy house, fancy cars, all these fancy things. But she was just as isolated as every domestic violence survivor I know. The people she talked to were her husband and her kids. And her kids frequently aligned with Dad because Dad had the power and Dad gave them goodies all the time. So she was always alone, so she never got to tell her story to anybody. Nobody ever listened. And when she would try to talk to them, she didn't know how to moderate herself at all, so she was like a St. Bernard puppy. They're nice and they're cute, but oh, geez, get off of me. Okay? So she's like that St. Bernard puppy. Well, she's that way with the person standing in line with her at the grocery store. She's like that with the person at the bank teller. She's like that way at Walmart if she's in line getting something. She blabbers her story to everybody because she doesn't know how not to. Okay? Now, some people don't tell anything and some people overtell it. But that's all part of what happens with the trauma response. So when you're going to talk to somebody on the phone, get that fresh cup of Starbucks first. Go to the bathroom first. Okay? Get that other stuff off your desk because it's very likely that this is going to take a little bit. Right? So when you look at the stuff that's up there, what you're trying to do is let the person know you care about what happened to them. Now, you don't have to really care if you don't want to, but you'd like to think you do. By letting them tell their story. Ask the question and give them time to answer it. And a lot of times you get these tangential things where somebody goes off on a tangent somewhere. You've all had that happen, right? Where you're trying to get some information and the person's told you everything about their kid going to school and about the dog and about whatever, but they still haven't answered your question. It's okay to bring them back, but do it gently. Don't do, hold on a damn minute, I got other things to do. I didn't call to find out about your dog. I'm a dog lover and all that. But I need this doggone receipt. You can't get paid till you give me that receipt. doing the threatening thing, okay? Now we're going to get their attention. No, you're not. Now you can think that in your head, and you can think that with your coworkers, and you can play with that with your coworkers. But if you do that on the phone, you're going to get diminishing returns. Because not only are you not going to get information about the receipt, but you're going to get another tangent.
Yeah.
Or the person's just going to clam up and not say anything at all. So you've gotten nothing, okay, except frustrated. You've gotten frustrated and you've done nothing to help the person. Okay, so you can go back to your coworker and grumble about that pain on the ass on the phone today that wouldn't give you the information on it. Or you can stop and take a deep breath and think, okay, this is what Linda was telling us about in that training. And we were all laughing and carrying on, but here it is facing me right here. Okay? And that's what I want you to do, is I want you to take that deep breath. Say, okay, wait a minute. Obviously the direct approach isn't going to work here. So let me find out, let me see how else I can get this. Okay? So one of the things you might think about doing is saying, how can I help you with getting this information? What can I do that would help you to get the information? So you're seen as a resource instead of a barrier. Okay? Now, I've done a lot of work with parents of murdered children, and you've worked on a lot of those claims. It's not a very fun population to work with. It's very difficult. I mean, the worst thing I think in the world can happen is to lose a child. It's not supposed to happen that way. And to lose them to violence, which is why we come into contact with them, well, you're trying to get, you have to get the receipts for all the burial stuff, if that's part of what they're submitting. Okay, now, asking for that information to somebody who buried their child is not a happy thing. They don't know where that stuff is. They don't want to think about it. They don't want to deal with it. They do want to be reimbursed for it. And you want them to you want to reimburse them. So say to them, okay, my name's Linda and I'm from the Victim Compensation Program. I know you've had a loss and I'm truly sorry for that loss, or something to that effect. As I'm processing your claim, there are a few things missing, and I know how hard it is to get all these things together. Okay, so I'm wondering if I could tell you the things that are missing, and maybe we could write those down together, and then I could work with you on how we could get those. Okay, so let me just tell you some of the things I need. Okay, I'm going to need the receipts from the funeral home for the burial. Okay, and I don't know whether you have that right there, but how could I help you to find that? How can I help you get that together? And if the person says, you hear them start to cry, or they don't answer, or whatever, you might say, who is there who could help you with that? Do you have someone else who could help you with that so we could get that? Because I really want to help you get your claim paid. So is there someone else who could help you with that? So what you're doing is, in this trauma-informed way, you're being a partner with the person instead of just somebody else who's a battering ram. Because you don't mean to be a battering ram, but it feels that way to them. Okay? So by joining them and being a partner in the process, that's part of the trauma-informed way to deal with you. Okay? But you're not a therapist. You may not have want to have lots of empathy for everybody in the world. I don't always want to have empathy for everybody. I work with you, by the way. But it's part of what we do with our work. Okay? If I can't try to approach you in a way that's respectful, then I should not approach you. The truth is, we all have bad days. If you're having a bad day because something in your life has gone crappy, don't pick that day to call the person that's going to be the person that had to bury their child. Don't pick that day. Because the truth is, you might be able to wait till tomorrow to do that paperwork, or this afternoon when you're in a better mood. So think about what's best to be a cooperative person and a team member with the person that you're working with. Think about where you're coming from, and think about how to collaborate with them. Because collaboration is the key to everything, when you get right down to it. You get much more stuff by being nice to people than by being firm with them or threatening them. And see, when you don't pay their claim, they think you're a threat. You're the enemy. You're trying to hurt them. You're trying to keep them from getting their services. Okay, you're just another bureaucrat who's on the other side. You can dispel that myth pretty quickly just in the way that you talk to the person about how can I help you to get this done? How can we do this together? Okay, is that all making sense? I see most people nodding their head. I don't have any idea what time it is or when I'm supposed to stop. Because I can blab forever. I've got stories that have nothing to do with what we're talking about. You know, I can find ways to fill time. I don't have a problem with that at all. Okay. So if we look at some other things, okay, one of the things that's on that list is what role did this being a victim play in their life? That's part of what you want to think about is, and let's go back to that Janae thing. I'm wiggling around because I have a cramp in my hamstring. Love that when that happens. Okay. I went to I do lots of interviews in jails. I spend a lot of my time in jails just as a visitor. Seriously, just as a visitor, I mean, just as a visitor. So I go to a lot of jails. I know where every jail is in Northern California. I was in the jail the other day doing an interview, and I'm in a contact room because usually I'm giving them paperwork and stuff. And I must have been hopping around like a jumping bean or something because his leg was just cramped up like crazy. And the guy that I was interviewing, and he was kind of low key, but I could tell that he wondered, why I was fidgeting around so much. So I finally just told him why I was doing it. And he did a nice little trauma-informed thing with me. He said, "Is there something I could do to help you?" And I said, "Yeah, you could get that chair over there and move it over so I can put my foot on it, so I can stretch my leg out," which is what we did. So I mean, you don't make assumptions about what's happening with people, okay? I fidget because I'm hyper, but I also fidget because, one of the things that happens with MS is you get muscle spasms all the time.
Linda, do you want
And
to
so you always, no, that's fine, thank you. See, quick learner here. I wonder if she can bring the chair up to stretch my leg out. It'd take us more effort to get my foot on that chair than it would. Thank you. Okay. So when you're working with people, don't make assumptions about what's going on. Ask them. Okay? Don't allow them to be invisible. And don't define them by the crime, even though what you're doing is all about the crime. That's all you're there for. You're not there to find out how their breakfast was. You're not there to be their best friend. You're not there to be their therapist. You're not there to be any of those things. You are there to help get the paperwork done to try to help them get their claim. You should be the good guy, but you're not. Many times, people are nasty to you. They get mad because you want this or you want that, or their claim wasn't approved and they're appealing it, and you're trying to get more information, and they're seeing you as the bad guy, and it's like, you get done and go, like, what did I do? I'm not just trying to help out. So do the thing about trying to be a collaborator. The more somebody that you're trying to help is resistant to you, the kinder you should become. It's kind of like a game, okay? I have a mother who can find ways to criticize anything and everything all the time. So when I'm on the phone with her, I can either get mad because she's going to be saying all sorts of stuff that is going to tick me off, or I can play little games about, gee, I bet in the span of the next 10 minutes she can say 10 negative things about me. All right? And while I'm on the phone, I feel pretty certain my mother will never see this film, by the way. So I don't get emotionally involved in it because I turn it into something else. So what your game is, if you will, is to get the information that you need to get. So your game is, let's see the best way you can possibly get it. So what if every time somebody is resistant to me, I say something kind or understanding to them? So when the person says, well, I don't even know what you're talking about, you come back with, how can I help you with that? I can understand that this is hard for you. How can I help you with that? You're going to get a lot further with that than with the declarative kind of things of I need this and I need this and I need this and this. Sometimes you get lucky and you get a bonus where somebody just really is, really anal retentive and they have everything right there in spite of the trauma. They've got all their little paperwork there. God, you love those claims, don't you? Those make your week, make your month, when you have them like that, okay? But most of the time, people don't have all their stuff, and they don't know what you're talking about. So respond to them with something that shows caring and joining with them. How can I help you with that? Okay? Now, it's not like when I call on the computer, and I am a low-tech woman in a high-tech world. Okay? When I call the helplines and the person has an accent and says his name is Bob. Okay? I know I'm not talking to Bob. Okay? And every time they're on the phone with me, they do the same tagline. Have you ever called those helplines? So for every question, before they put you on hold, terminal hold, for the 14th time, they always say that same tagline. And it's usually something like, thank you for asking that question. Hold on for a moment while I look for whatever. But it's always something that's kind of a nice statement before they put you on terminal hold. Okay? Now, you don't have to be robotic about it, and you don't need to say the same thing over and over. But it's okay to have a little line in your head that you're thinking something like, well, how could I help you with that? How could I make that easier for you? I know this is difficult. How can I make that easier for you? Who could you ask? Who might help you with that? Etc. Okay? And be willing to listen, because you're going to get all this stuff. They're going to start telling you about this, that, and the other thing. And you don't have to listen to all of it. I'm not saying you have to stay on the phone for an hour. But I'm saying be respectful and let the person tell a little bit of their story. And then if there's a point where they take a breath, then you can always, at that point, say, I understand this is difficult. Is there a way that I can help you with finding what we need to get your claim processed? So you don't have to be on the phone all day with them, okay? But what I'm saying is be respectful of that story, okay? And then come back to, how can I help you to get this information? Okay? Now if you look at the other things, the other thing on here is we deal with this work all the time. So when it talks about practice self-care, what that means is we have to find ways to detach from what we do and when we get away from it. Okay? As you can probably tell, I like to laugh. I like to say funny things. I like to laugh at people and hear funny things. Laughter is a great stress reducer. And we know hormonally in our brain, when we laugh, it releases all those endorphins and enkephalins and adrenaline and all that sort of stuff that it helps us to relax and helps us to feel good. So when we're doing the work that we do all day, and you're doing the work where you don't even get the satisfaction necessarily of seeing the end result. You don't get the satisfaction of working with a survivor and seeing them through. Okay, so Elaine and I get a bunch of bonuses because we get to work with people directly and see their journey. You don't get to see that most of the time with what you do. So you have to really help yourself in other ways to deal with the kind of horrific things that we deal with every day and still come out on the other side as a caring human being. I used to work almost exclusively with kids and adolescents, and most of my clients were victims of domestic violence and or sexual assault or other kinds of horrific child abuse. And it's easy after a while to leave your office and think every guy is a child molester and a wife beater. It's easy to start thinking that. Because the work that I did, every one of those guys were. Okay, but the truth is, I know lots of really nice guys. I know lots of really cool guys who are respectful to women and children and other men. Who treat other people with respect. Who are caring and reach out and want to do other things. And one of the things I found is that I needed to be around them more. Because I needed to be reminded, because of the work that I did 40 or 50 hours a week, I needed to see those guys. I needed to talk to my cousin Dee, who's one of the nicest guys you could ever encounter. Okay? My brother's not a bad guy, even though we had a little interesting debate over the Janae Rice thing. But talk to good guys. Talk to kids who care about their kids. My brother loves his kids. Okay? So when you start to feel like everybody I deal with is a jerk and a creep and a criminal, that means you need to diversify. Okay, you need to get out and spend some time around some other people. Okay, now I do a lot of work with court cases about domestic violence and sexual assault and trauma. Okay, I do a lot of that kind of stuff. So my life is immersed with those kinds of things. What is it? They're asking me if I want something, but I don't know what it is. It looks like some sort of footstool. Oh,
Facilitates any comfort.
we'll see if this works. Hold on.
It actually moves in the other direction.
Oh.
Is that better?
That's all right. Works fine, just like that.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I had a judge one time. I was sitting in a courtroom, and they had to move a chair out for me to testify, so it meant I had to swivel my chair this direction where my feet were kind of dangling down. And the judge apparently had a little footstool back there behind where he sits, and he stopped the testimony for a moment and brought the footstool over and put it in front of me. So
Well, that's what that is.
random acts of kindness, they're everywhere. And one of the interesting things about having a disability that's visible to other people is that most people do one of two things. I'm either invisible because I'm lower than they are, which is weird because I'm 6 feet tall, but I hardly ever stand up anymore, so people don't know I'm 6 feet tall. When you're in one of these things, you become invisible. It's like kids. Kids are invisible when they're down there. So you either become invisible or people are really very kind and want to help. And I need a lot of kindness. A lot of people open doors for me. A lot of people offer, can I help you? One of the things about having MS is to have a sense of humor, because lots of stuff happens when you have MS. I have fallen in some unique and wonderful places in public before I started using a scooter. So I've been doing a wipeout, and I can't get back up because my legs don't work. So it's always interesting what people do. And almost no one, it's not like you see on those YouTube things where, I guess nobody thinks I'm a drunk. But on the YouTube things you see where people just walk by, I don't have that at all. Everybody always wants to help. People want to do nice things if you give them an opportunity. And part of the work that we do is doing nice things for ourselves. We can do nice things for other people, and that helps us too. So take care of yourself when you do this work, because if you don't, you will burn out and you won't be able to do it very long. Reading every day about crimes. I see police reports, I see crime scene photos, I see autopsy reports, I read all those things, I hear about domestic violence and sexual assault, stuff that people have done to each other, all the time, every day. Okay, now I used to play golf, and I could just forget about all that when I was on the golf course. Now I have to find other things to do, but I'm pretty creative. Okay, I can find things to do. I have lots of friends, and I love to laugh, and you have to get away from it. So find ways to do self-care. Elaine and I have both been doing this work for decades. We both know people we started out with who aren't doing it anymore because they can't. They reached a point where they couldn't do it anymore. And you need to know when that happens, and you need to actually take a break. A lot of people in the DA's office that work in the child abuse section do like a 2-year rotation, and then they have to rotate out and do something else. Because it's just too horrific to do that every day, all the time, 24/7, those kind of crimes. Okay, so, and some of them might rotate back later, but a lot of them have to rotate out. Same way with the domestic violence unit. Now, sometimes they rotate out just because they need other experiences. But a lot of people can't stay doing that work for a long time. Elaine and I have seen a lot of people come and go. Elaine and I have probably both told a lot of people that it's time to go. You might want to think about doing something else for a while. The fact that you were talking about wanting to slap the survivor probably means you need to take a break from this kind of work for a little while. Okay? So take breaks through the day and do something different. Go stretch. Go do some yoga. Go get your cup of coffee and take a walk. Get some fresh air. Do something where you break up your day. Maybe you have some friends. A lot of people down around the Capitol walk. Walking's a really good thing for you. And it's also good for your mind. Because it clears some of that stuff out, lets some of those endorphins come back in there to take the place of all the stuff that's coming up. Because you're being secondarily traumatized by reading the stuff that you read and doing the work that you do. And we can forget that. So it's really important to take care of yourself. And that's as much about being trauma-informed as anything, as you being as healthy as you can be. I can't help you if I'm bleeding. On the airplane they always say, that oxygen mask jumps down at you. After you freak out, put your mask on first before you put the mask on of your child or anybody acting like one. Now, the reason why they say that is, you can't help somebody if you aren't okay. Okay? In the time that it would take you to be helping somebody else and fumble around, then you might not be okay. So, take care of yourself. Put your mask on. There's plenty of time. You're trying to go die in that time. Or the person next to you acting like a fool isn't going to die in that time. Okay? So, do that first. Take care of yourself. It helps you be better able to work with others. It makes you healthier, and it's going to make you more responsive to their needs. Okay? If you just had a nice walk, gotten a lot of, hopefully not bad air, but fresh air, on a nice day around the Capitol, and you come back to sit at your desk or your cubicle or wherever you're sitting, and you make that next phone call or deal with that next pile of paperwork, you're a little more refreshed to do that. And then when you have to make that call, you're in a little better frame of mind to be more mindful, of working with that person in a trauma-informed way. And that's really what trauma-informed is treating people with respect and understanding that you ask, how? Tell me about you, help me understand you, instead of why did you or didn't you do something. And when most of you probably have kids, okay? If your kids do something, maybe they got a little grade in school that you weren't that happy with. They brought that spelling test home, got a big old D or F on it, and they told you they studied their spelling words, of course. And if you say to them, handing this paper to them, as parents tend to do, why did you get an F on this paper? What are you going to get? Silence and excuses. Okay? It doesn't work even dealing with kids about stuff like that. To try to confront them about stuff, you're not going to get what you want. Instead, you go, what happened with your spelling words? Now, they're going to be suspicious of you at first. My grandson. If I say to him, well, what happened with this? He's suspicious. He thinks all I'm really doing is saying, why did you do that? He's not sure in the beginning that I really want to know his story. So he's a little evasive in the beginning. But as he figures out that I really do want to know, and how can I help him with that? Okay? Did you hit a roadblock? Is there something I can help you with? Is there something about, he knows better than to ask me about math. The math that, he's a 6th grader. The math he had in the 4th grade never made any sense to me. Why did he do it? I knew how to add, subtract, multiply, divide. I learned a little bit about fractions and this, that, and the other thing. I can add up bowling scores really fast. Okay, I can keep score in a golf course. I can figure out how much I'm supposed to pay for my groceries when I get there. What is all this stuff with brackets and sets and subsets and X's and Y's and Q's and Z's and all that stuff? It's like, I have no idea what that is. So if you have trouble with your math, then you have trouble with your math. Okay, I know how to use spell check on the computer, so I'm pretty good with that. Right? So instead ask, what can I do to help you with this? How can I make this a better experience? What would make it easier for you to do this? Okay? That's a different approach than saying, why'd you get a D on this paper? And it's the same way when you're doing your work. If you say, why didn't you send in, you said you were going to send in, blah, 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 blah. Why didn't you send that in to me? I've got 5 minutes, is that what you just told me? Okay, I thought maybe she was just waving at me. Okay. It had a purpose, 5 minutes. So if you're trying to find out, the person said, okay, I'm going to send you all this stuff, you'll have it, and then you don't get it. So you have to call them again and say, basically want to know, where is this paperwork and why didn't you send it to me? If you ask it that way, you're probably not going to get a very satisfactory answer. So again, it's like, do you remember me? I called you the other day and I'm trying to help process your claim. And it seems that, there's still one piece missing. How could I help you get that turned in so we could get your claim done? Okay, it takes very little effort to say it that way. And it makes all the difference on the other end of it. So there's one more slide I think we have up there, if you want to flip that up there, so that I don't cheat you on your slides. Oh my God. Look at that. And I have scribbles all over it, and I only have 4 minutes left. So guess what?
You can have 7.
Yeah, you can read it. Basically what this whole chart is doing is just say, let's create an environment, an environment that's part of our trauma-informed environment. Let's treat ourselves and each other that way. It's not just about working with our clients, it's also about working with our coworkers, working with our boss, working with people we supervise. If we treat people in this kind of way, where we collaborate about information, and where we try to make things work instead of figuring out why people are broken, why they didn't do it, but how can we make this happen better, then it's a happier place for all of us to be. We've all worked for bosses who are jerks, who treated us with disrespect, and we didn't like it. Okay, so don't become one of those people then when you get to be the boss, because that's not what you want to do. You don't want to model that, you want to model something different. Okay, so the whole point again, this whole trauma-informed verbiage, is to create an environment of safety, respect, collaboration, and where we show each other in various ways in ourselves that we care about each other and we care about ourselves. And that's what it's really all about. It's not anything fancy, and it's not something, everybody writing books about it, but all they're saying is the common sense stuff that most of us have tried to do most of our lives, which is to treat ourselves and other people with respect, and to try to frame the kinds of questions that we ask people in ways that show that and support that. Thank you very much for having me.